There's a moment, somewhere in the middle of loving someone, when you realize you can't find the edges of yourself anymore. Not because you've lost something, because something has opened. Novalis, the 18th century German romantic who died at 28, having loved one person with his whole nervous system, believed that was not a symptom of love. It was the purpose of it. His name was Georg Philipp Friedrich von Hardenberg. He called himself Novalis, a Latin word meaning one who breaks new ground. He was 22 when he met Sophie von Kuhn. She was 12. He waited. She turned 13, and he fell into something that reorganized him entirely. She died of tuberculosis before she turned 16. And what he wrote afterward became some of the most precise descriptions of love ever set down. He wrote in his notebooks, "Love is the final aim of world history. Not the reward, not the destination. The aim, the thing toward which everything is pointed." Which sounds like beautiful poetry until you sit with what it actually means. It means the breaking open you feel when you love someone is not an accident. It is, he believed, the universe doing its most serious work through you. You know the feeling he's describing, not the early excitement. That's something else. This is later. This is when someone has become so specific to you that the world reorganizes itself around their presence. When you walk into a room and you already know if they're in it. When something good happens and your first instinct is to tell them before you've even fully registered it yourself. That's not infatuation anymore, that's the wound. The word wound might feel wrong at first. We're taught to want love that feels safe, settled, certain, held. But Novalis is pointing at something different. He means that real love is the place where the boundary between you and everything else becomes permeable, where yourself, which you've spent years fortifying, simply lets someone through. And that letting through is not a weakness. It's the most radical thing a person can do. There's a German romantic concept underneath all of this. Sehnsucht, longing with no single object. The ache that is not quite grief and not quite desire, but lives somewhere between them. Novalis believed love awakened Sehnsucht not to torture you, but to point you towards something larger than ordinary life. Something the self alone can never reach. The wound of love is the opening that Sehnsucht was always trying to make. Think about what it feels like to miss someone you still have. When you're lying next to them and you already ache at the thought of mourning. When loving them makes the world simultaneously more beautiful and more unbearable. Novalis would say that's not anxiety, or not only anxiety. That's yourself recognizing correctly that it has been opened towards something it cannot contain, and that the opening is real even if the person leaves. Because here is the part that most writing about love will not tell you. The wound does not close when the relationship ends. This is what Novalis knew from the inside. Sophie died, and he did not recover, not because he was weak, but because the opening she made in him was structural. She had changed the shape of the vessel. You have probably felt this. Someone you loved years ago still has a room in you, and occasionally, the door swings open for no reason, in the middle of an ordinary afternoon. The conventional story about grief after love is that it is a wound that should close. That healing means returning to the self you were before. But what if that's the wrong story entirely? What if the fact that it doesn't close is not failure but information? Evidence that what happened was real, that it reached something in you that ordinary life cannot touch. The scar is the proof, not of damage, of depth. Novalis finished his hymns to the night after Sophie died. He was not trying to recover, he was trying to understand. And what he arrived at, through the grief, through the philosophy, was this. Love is not what happens between two people who are whole and stable and prepared. Love is what happens when two insufficiencies recognize each other and decide to stand together at the edge of something neither of them can name. That reframing matters more than it might seem. Because so much of the anxiety inside love, the fear of being too much, too open, too dependent, comes from believing that love should make you more complete, more contained, more stable. And when it doesn't, when it makes you feel instead like your edges are dissolving, you assume something has gone wrong. Novalis is saying, that is love working. That is the whole point. He died in 1801. He was 28, which means he spent roughly 5 years writing from inside one of the most sustained philosophical meditations on love and loss in European literature. He never finished his novel. He left fragments. And it's the fragments that feel most true, because love is not a completed argument. It's an open question you carry in your body for the rest of your life. So when you feel it, that particular ache, that sense of your edges going soft, that fear that you've let someone too far in, try to stay with it for a moment before you call it a problem. That feeling is not evidence that you've made yourself vulnerable in the wrong direction. It's the wound opening towards something larger than the two of you. It's what Novalis spent his whole short life trying to describe. And he never quite got there. Neither will you. That's not a failure. That's the shape of the thing,